Welcome to the HC Leadership Podcast, forged in fire, led with purpose, formerly known as the Heat of Command. We're here to explore what it takes to lead courageously authentic. From the fireground, battlefield, ballfield, classroom, or boardroom, we bring you real conversations to inspire, challenge, and drive change. Here are your hosts, Kyle Matusik and me, Carrie Henderson. Hello, TEEX and HC Leadership Podcast listeners. We have another awesome episode spinning up for you guys here. And we have Dr. Ashby from Indianapolis Fire Department and retired Chief Deere from Dallas Fire Department. And they spoke earlier today pretty off the cuff about, I believe, culture and responsibility. Whose responsibility is it for culture? So I'm going to let them introduce themselves individually and then hear their thoughts on leadership. So.
Oh, well, again, I'm Candace Ashby. I come out of Indianapolis, Indiana. I've been in the fire service for a little over 40 years. I've been career 36, and I'm just absolutely having a blast. I'm a battalion chief on the Northwest side, and I have 7 stations of 60 firefighters, 15 officers under my command, and absolutely have a blast every time I go to work. And I've given the opportunity to travel the country and talk about leadership and officer development and organizational problem solving.
Awesome. That's refreshing to hear that you love work and that you have a great time.
Well, and people ask me when I'm going to retire, and I say 35 years was just a warm up. I want another 35 years in the fire service because I love it more today than I've ever loved it.
Awesome. That's awesome. And it probably has to do with what you're talking about in your presentation, all of that stuff. So, all right, Chief.
Daniel DeYear, I retired after 45 years as a professional firefighter. The last 32 of them, with the city of Dallas. I retired as a deputy chief. I had all of the passion I ever had in the service. So to Dr. Ashby's statement about she wants to do another 35 years, that was still my plan. I still had the passion to do that. However, my family, my body, a bunch of other things kept creeping in, realizing at some point I'm going to need to retire. So I made the decision to finally retire, but I'm blessed with the fact that I still get to speak and teach a lot and influence in the fire service. And I also travel to other states besides Texas. I do a lot of speaking and teaching here, but I've done more and more in other areas and other departments, other conferences. So all I'm really trying to do is pay it forward, give it back. So I'm basically sharing a lot of information I wish somebody had shared with me earlier in my career. And just trying to make that impact. I still serve in other areas. With TEEX, I'm the curriculum development chief for their municipal school each summer now. And I serve as the chairman for the Firefighter Advisory Committee for the Texas Commission on Fire Protection, and then the vice chair of the Health and Wellness Committee.
Oh, you're busy. And you guys don't know us, but some information, some background on Kyle and I. Kyle is from Illinois. He's a lieutenant at a very affluent community about 20 minutes outside of Chicago. And I'm from Virginia, from the Williamsburg area. So my department is James City County. But my husband is from Dallas originally. And so we come back to Dallas every year just about to visit family. So
well, great.
Yes, we love Texas. We love coming here down to this conference. And this is our 4th year speaking here and then now podcasting a little bit more because we just love to talk about leadership and we love to meet other people that are like-minded. And almost everybody that stopped by the booth, we've told them like everybody's speaking the same language, right? Nowadays, it seems like, especially in Texas, I feel like Texas is doing a really good job with leadership development. Some other parts of the country that we've traveled to are trying to get there, but I love the example that I think that Texas is setting. So tell us about your class that you taught, your presentation from earlier today. What did you guys talk about? Some tidbits.
Oh, we talked about the accountability aspect of the responsibility we have to the culture.
Okay.
And we took the approach from the top down and the bottom up approach that everybody in the organization has a piece or an ownership of some part of that influences and impacts the organization, and that you typically don't get the organization you wish for. It's the one you're investing in and working hard for. And so that our job really, because we only have them for an hour, or in our case, maybe 50 minutes. And, we're both speaking, so we only get to share so much information. And I believe our goal or objective is to simply inspire them to go back to their organizations and contribute at a higher level so that they're they're a student of the fire service like we are. I think we would both agree we're still students more than anything else in our industry because it is changing constantly. And every challenge we have out there is unique to the fire service sometimes because a lot of other industry isn't measured to the standards that we are, but such as the brotherhood. We're one of the few industries in the face of the earth that use that term in some form or fashion. What that looks like, I can tell you in my 45-year career, I do not believe the brotherhood in 2026 looks the same as it did in the 1970s.
Mm-hmm.
It's not. And that's not to say it's bad, but it's changed. I think our needs, our wants, our servant mind tends to be a little bit leaning more towards self than others. And I didn't say it in class today, but every now and then in a class, I'll refer to a famous liberal Democratic president one time who said, "Ask not what your country can do for you, but what can you do for your country?" And I don't think as a country we could be farther from that in today's world. But I think the fire service is the last hope of what true service looks like. Because a lot of times I'm standing in a store under a sign that says customer service, and I don't ever feel like that.
Right.
I don't feel like that. But I think the fire service is still doing that.
Yeah.
So that's just an opinion moved in with experience as well.
Yeah. And your thoughts?
Yeah, and so playing off of what Daniel was saying, we did this class on culture, and at the end of it, we wanted to bring it full circle to where everybody took ownership in that organization to make it successful. Not just the chiefs or the officers, but also the firefighters and the driver engineers, that we need more people to understand that they have to take ownership. And that's where the power resides. Typically in an organization is at the bottom, but we're so driven by the social media the world today that all the leadership's got to be from top down.
Mm-hmm.
But I do a class called Leadership from the Bottom Up because I believe the people at the top come from the people at the bottom. And not everybody should have got hired in the fire service. Not everybody should have been promoted that's there. So what are we going to do about it when we're dealt those cards? Well, there's not a whole lot we can do about it. I mean, we can not like it all that we want, but at what point do we say we're going to change it? And that's where I'm trying to activate everybody in the bottom of the organization to take control, because I believe that we are conditioned to believe from the time we hit the street that anything that's wrong with the fire department, we blame it on the administration and the fire chief.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what we're conditioned to do, is to blame somebody else for everything. So Daniel and I believe it's unfortunately a culture by default of blame. And we're trying to get people to say, you can make a culture by design and have a culture of accountability if you so choose. But in order to do that, we have to grab the hearts and minds of every single person in that organization and tell them all that they can all be leaders if they choose to. It doesn't take a rank. Now, you need the ones in rank to understand what leadership is. But we've softened over the last, I believe, decade, and a lot of it being the social media-driven world, for example. There's a movement that says, you know what, we don't want managers, we want leaders. We don't want bosses. It's got a negative connotation to it. And I think it's with the best of intentions, but we have taken this and we have jumbled up all of these ideologies to the point that it's confused everybody. And I believe it's softened the fire service because we have kids today wanting to be leaders, but they don't know that they can go in the firehouse and be a boss and to lay down the expectations and to put their foot down when they need to put their foot down, because what leadership classes are teaching is don't hurt anybody's feelings. Go in and be everybody's friend. And, you don't want to get sued. You don't want to go to HR. And it's softened us up. And what the movement that we're trying to create is a world in which there's better bosses. And that's not got a negative connotation to it. And we need stronger bosses that are parents out here in the companies, because some kids need to be loved and hugged. And there's another subset of kids that need a paddle. And it is the company officer's job to deliver that blow, but they're not doing it. And why aren't they doing it? Where back when him and I came in, he got longer in the fire service than I have. We came in, the real strength of the organization lied in the house with the captains. Mm-hmm. And they would actually do something about it. We don't see that anymore because the power was taken away from the captains to do that and to take care of that. And how do we change that? Well, I don't believe it's a leadership issue. I do believe it's a fundamental training issue, that we're not training our officers in the topics that they need.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so many nuggets there of things that we love to talk about as well. Just so many. Where to start? The company officer thing hits home to me. I really feel like a lot of that company officer, the culture and everything is coming from those frontline officers. And I think, and we're going to talk Wednesday about this, is when you take away their ability to critically think, because we've just policied people to death. And so then they're trying to look at, well, what policy says that I can hold this person accountable? I've got a 400-page policy manual that says when I can go to the bathroom and, when I can make my bed. What leadership decisions can I make on my own? And they're just trying to memorize policies. And so they don't know how to hold people accountable. And so they just don't. And we've talked before about how, what you're saying about the fire service being soft, this pendulum that just swung. Like we went from this hard, fire service, do as I say kind of deal. And then it's like, okay, we swung way this other direction. Like, how do we get it back? And it sounds like that's a lot of what you're talking about in your presentation. You guys are traveling. Like, how do you get it back to this? How do you get people to be accountable for themselves, and how do you get them to hold other people accountable, right? And get the buy-in to get people to actually come along with you when you want to. Just such a challenging part.
Yeah.
So big, what do you see big leadership changes? You guys have both been around the fire service for a long time. What do you see as big leadership changes over the decades?
Well, for me personally, it was that drift that you were talking about. You can call it a pendulum, but it was a drift away from holding people accountable. And we sort of stopped doing that somehow, some way, and it became a pick and choose. Like certain events, we would hold somebody, to those standards, and there'd be a consequence if they didn't. But then we'd blur the discussion based on some metric that somebody else pulled out of a HR drawer or civil service drawer, and it went away. I remember experience after experience in Dallas where I had been the academy commander at one time, and then went back to the field for years, and then ended up going back as the deputy chief of the training division. And I remember one of the new academy commanders had an issue with the recruit and had documented all of the poor performance and poor expectations. And we submitted it up the chain of command, and we didn't get backed. And he was sort of devastated by it, but he at least knew I had backed him. But I remember having to meet with him and tell him, listen, this doesn't impact you the next time you make this decision. In other words, you don't turn a blind eye next time because it didn't work this time.
Right.
I'm still holding you to your job.
Yeah.
You're still going to be accountable for this. So you document it. If we send it up to HR or we send it to the internal affairs division, that's the reason why we're not the judge and jury. Somebody else is. And maybe somebody else is looking at politics or the HR equations or the civil service equations, and it's not something that they can rule on in our favor. But that doesn't mean you were not successful in doing your job. So don't let that deter you. So in the organization I happen to have come from, and I see this with a lot of others, is if you're the supervisor or the captain or the lieutenant or company officer, and you are the person who is going to enforce the rules and regulations, there's a negative connotation to that. As a matter of fact, those officers tend to get labeled. And I think that's a disservice to the fire service. But I remember in my career, being transferred at one point, I was promoting and I was moving to another fire station, and somebody made the comment to me, "Oh, watch out for that captain. He goes by the book." And I remember thinking, okay, does that mean he's really difficult to work with? And then it dawned on me, I had read the book, right? So if he went by the book, I knew what the book said,
Yeah.
right? So that seemed pretty fair to me.
You know the expectations there.
Right. And then it dawned on me, I had previously worked for an officer who was a Jekyll and Hyde. Every day for the first hour of the shift, no one knew whether Jekyll showed up or Hyde showed up. And I mean, we even had bets at times. It's like, hey, it's your day to go in there and find out if Cap showed up, mad at his wife or, mad about his part-time business, or it's a good day for us. So, the problem with the policies and procedures is, and I came from a department, and I shared this earlier today, we had 7 3-inch binders of our policies and procedures and rules and regulations. There was an attempt, and I believe it still exists to this day, but there was an attempt to create a policy or a rule for every possible scenario that could ever possibly exist. Well, I came to learn that's not possible. No. It's just not possible. And to Brunacini's credit, he said, most mission statements, rules, and regulations of a department should fit on one page and just be simple. And because I'm now a student, if we were to discuss in this conversation, the greatest leaders that ever lived in the history of the world, they all have several things in common. One is none of them are alive today, right? They all were a long time ago, and none of them had the opportunity to buy books at Barnes & Noble or Amazon to study about how to be a great leader. So how did they ever get to be a good leader? I think we overcomplicate it. It's much more simple than that. It's just giving a care and taking care of the people that you work with. And whatever your mission is, whether it's corporate or the fire service, is you're accountable for your job, whatever your responsibility is. And if you do that, I mean, this sounds euphoric, but I mean, if you just pictured everybody on the face of the earth today, right now, being accountable for their job, I'm thinking everything works pretty well. We just know that that's not the reality of the world. So we have to deal with that in the fire service. So to Candace's point, I really love how she takes an approach on, so how do we deal with that? Yeah, everybody's not going to fit into that mold. Matter of fact, I don't want to get ahead and use your 10% or what I call the outliers or the organizational terrorists. That's never not going to exist. I mean, if we took the 20 people in our department tomorrow and we're able to get them fixated on doing their job and being accountable and moving forward in the organization, somebody else eventually is going to come along and start trying to fall into that category again. So it's not a box we check. It's just a mindset. And I think that's why I'm glad we have the brotherhood, because that kind of ties it all back into the culture. Where does it come from?
Yes. Yeah. And just to ask you one question, because it just popped back in my head, and you were talking about, hiring some folks that can't do the job, right? And promoting folks that really shouldn't be. Like, what do you think are some things to try? Because people are always going to slip through the cracks, but what are some things in place to make sure we're hiring the right people or promoting the right people? I know that's like a 20-hour-long conversation, but like in a few seconds.
I think we've gotten away from hiring people that bring the same values that we need in the fire service. It has, and today is an ever-changing world. The departments are all having, whether career, volunteer, or combination, a recruitment and retention problem. We've got less and less people going out, and it's gotten to the point that we're just hiring anybody with a pulse. And we all have the probationary period, but how many people actually adhere to that to get, I think people show their hand early on, and nobody's taking care of it. And we do need to change our hiring processes. We need to change our promotional processes as well, because we're missing the mark. Most places, as I travel the country, they just go off fire officer 1, 2, 3, and 4. If you want to be a lieutenant, go take fire officer 1. You want to be a captain, go take fire officer 2. While those classes they're there, how much of that actually teaches you how to be an officer? It doesn't. No. And then we send people through a promotional process thinking the promotional process is going to make them an officer, and that doesn't. That just takes a group of people and competes them with each other to see how they're going to score against each other. And then we hand them a badge, and we hand them a book. And we say, everything that you need to know, lieutenant, captain, chief, is in that book. If your people show up late, write them up. If they wear white socks, write them up. You can lay a piece of paper on somebody with less than 10 years on a job and be effective. Lay the same piece of paper on somebody with 25 or more years on the job, and you might as well add gas to the fire. Where is that training at? When do you coach? When do you counsel? When do you lay paper on somebody to change an unwanted behavior? So I think we get a lot of concepts and terms. It gets all convoluted. So, such as servant leadership. Servant leadership is a number one leadership style out there because it's about serving others. But we have to go and educate these young officers. There's no room for servant leadership in the middle of a fire ground. You have to manage. But because of the social media driven world, we don't want managers. We only want leaders. We don't want bosses. Well, stop. Because half of what the supervisor does is management 101. But where's the management 101 classes at? There's tons of leadership classes, but are they really teaching what needs to be done? So two of the main, I'll just tell you the top 6 problems, most popular problems that I deal with as I go across the country and I listen to people say, where's the problems at in your organization? Here they are. Lack of communication, lack of accountability, lack of direction, lack of good quality policies and procedures, a lack of good hands-on training, and a lack of leadership development for our officers. And I will ask the crowd wherever we're presenting, does that sound familiar to you? And they all say yes. And it's because get out of your silo. We're all dealing with the same issues all across the country, no matter the size of the department, no matter the, career, combination, volunteer, it doesn't matter. We're all suffering the same things. We're the ones causing it. We're causing the mental health crisis in the fire service. I'm not into mental health, but we're causing our own demise. And to your point on the policies and procedures, I ask people, if a fire chief came out with a policy today and you don't agree with that policy, does anything at all prevent you from writing down how you would change it and send it back up the chain of command? The answer is no. What do we do instead? We bitch. Now we put the shoe on the other foot, say, now you're the fire chief and you come out with a policy and some of your people out there aren't happy about it and they got a better way. Would you want to hear it? Everybody's like, yeah. You see the disconnect?
Yeah.
The disconnect is from the top to the bottom. And while everybody agrees with the top 6 problems, I have to get them to understand in just a few minutes that every problem that happens at the top of the organization happens at the company level first. You have officers that don't talk to their people. Officers who won't hold their people accountable. They don't set a direction. They don't know the policies and procedures. They're the ones that don't want to train. And it is customary in our line of work from officers that the higher you, more you have on and the higher rank you go, the less training and education you take. And we have that wrong. And this is what we are, that's our culture. And we're a culture of blame. We are trained and conditioned to believe that from the time we come into the firehouse that anything that's wrong with that fire department, we blame on the fire chief or the administration. And while I'm not here to take up for that fire chief administration, and I tell people, I hope you like your guy. But if you don't, what are you doing to change it? Because every single day you walk in the firehouse, you're mentoring the future lieutenants, the future captains, the future chiefs. And what are you mentoring them to do? And typically, we're all repeating Groundhog Day over and over and over. We're just saying, hey, blame somebody else for everything. Getting us to believe a fallacy that just change out the guy at the top and everything's going to get better. Well, guess what? You change out the guy at the top, change him out over and over and over. Change out the clown, the circus stays the same until we fix the circus, because the people at the top come from the people at the bottom. And until we can get a hold of the bottom and understand fundamentally where the issues lie, we're seeing symptoms of those issues. And then I rip the Band-Aid off and I tell people this is where the issues really lie in the fire service. When we come into the firehouse and we throw our brothers and sisters under the bus and we stab each other in the back and we take that knife out, we stab the next person. And until we get that under control, you're not going to make the fire service any better. But who controls that environment is the company officers. They have the ability to walk in and tell somebody that's running their mouth, why don't you shut up? And they don't. And when we don't control that 10% of negative naysayers, it spreads like a cancer through the entire organization. And so I tell people all the time, there's some firehouses that are absolute rock stars, and there's some firehouses that are not. And all you have to do is look at the company officer. Some shifts want to train, some shifts don't. All you have to do is look at the battalion chief. So when are we going to start taking these people that say, pick me, I want to be an officer, I want to be a leader, and holding their feet to the fire and saying, all I want you to do is the job that you signed up to do. But instead, they sit back and say, well, if the department doesn't pay for it and they don't give me overtime, then by God, I'm not going to do it. Seriously? And you want to know what's wrong with the fire service when these people are in leadership positions with an attitude like that?
Yeah.
And to kind of piggyback earlier in the conversation, we're talking about the folks coming into the fire department. I think where I see a good example of the disconnect from the top and the bottom is our hiring procedures, right? So typically in a fire department, you take a written test, you get a score, it puts you somewhere on a list, you go through a CPAT examination, maybe you do a polygraph, and you get interviewed, now you're on the job. Maybe you do a drug test in there, but that's basically it. And to your point, if they have a pulse and they did all of that, we hire you. Nowhere in there did you get evaluated what your work ethic was like. Are you trustworthy? Are you accountable? Are you a servant? Are you self-service or a negative individual? That's what the probationary period's for. So like my experience in my career is I don't see us fixing the way we hire our folks, because that's real easy to blame that on the fire chief, right? Just change your hiring policies. Well, that's dictated by politics and a whole lot of other things in our society. But when you finally get done with your training and you're now at the fire station, are you a good fit? Are you part of the brotherhood? Are you going to be the servant for the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years as you serve the community at whatever rank you are in the department? And that's where you get evaluated during your 6-month or 1-year-long probationary period. Well, whose job is that now? Now it's the company officer, right? It's the officer you're working with, and they're supposed to be evaluating you on that. And it's been my experience. I've seen a lot of folks that, hey, if you just show up for the next 6 months, you don't get in trouble. I don't have to write a letter on you. You're good to go. And there's no development that takes place during that 6 months. It's just like Candace said, it's Groundhog Day. You just keep showing up everywhere along the line. I know Dallas, I believe now they finally have gotten it revised, but for the longest time we were trying to create a progression. In other words, if month 1, you shouldn't look the same at the end of month 2, and you certainly shouldn't look like that at the month 5. But as the chief of the training division, sometimes I would get an evaluation on the 6th month saying this individual, you should be terminated. Well, I'm quickly looking at their file, and they just got 5 months worth of evaluations that were glowing, saying they were doing great. Unless they got arrested or they had a violence in the workplace or racism or something horrible take place, now you're telling me they don't have good performance? Where were you for the last 5 months? That should have been documented since day one. So we're back to that complacency stage, and you have folks that are not doing their job. If you have an officer and you're part of that probationary period, you have a unique assignment and you have a huge responsibility, because, that is where we could weed them out. And if we don't, now we own them for the next 30, 40 years because of civil service. And that's where I've seen personally, that's probably my biggest experience where I see the breakdown. And to the company officer, which I know she and I both agree, most pivotal people in the organization.
Yeah, I agree with that as well. We took a little different approach for our hiring process. No written test. Our HR wouldn't support it. But we are a smaller department, and Virginia is a right to work state, so we're not bound by all the other civil service stuff. But we really take the opportunity during their interviews to find out their values. And we don't ask them their values because people will tell you their integrity and honesty and all the ones that people think that they're their values. But we ask questions about past performance, not at a workplace, but how you've shown up for other people. So if we want to look at teamwork, or if we want to look at work ethic, we ask very specific questions. And it's very surprising how honest people will be, even when they're bad at that. They'll tell you in their examples of, how have you shown up for someone, gone above and beyond for someone, anybody in your family and your church and your, volunteer, whatever you're doing. It does not have to be career fire service examples to try to get people in early that match the values of our department. And our fire chief supports that, which I love. He's very big on the vision and the values of our fire department and matching people. And also, you guys talking about your company officers and your people, the blame game and the negative and the talking bad about your department. How are you ever going to recruit people to come work there if all you ever do is complain about how terrible it is to work there?
That's what we're doing to our kids today.
Yeah.
We're hiring 25-year-olds, sending them out to the companies. And when they don't work out, the people in the companies are blaming the hiring process in the training division. When what these kids are hearing is, why did you get a job here, kid? This place sucks.
Yeah.
We need a new fire chief. I can't wait to retire in 122 days. When our kids are hearing nothing but that, do you blame them for getting up and walking out that door?
No.
And say, this isn't a job for me. I thought this was a great job. But obviously these people aren't happy.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But then those unhappy people are blaming somebody else. And then we get into that blaming culture, and it goes around and around. It's like, there's a lot of great conferences today, and I've taken tons and tons and tons of leadership classes. They all seem to carry the same message as Maxwell and Simon Sinek, and it's great to, we've got these kids believing if you just take enough leadership classes, you'll be a leader one day. Like it's a destination that they're going to arrive at, and it's not a lifelong grind and how they show up every single day. So we do leadership a little different in how we explain it to get people to understand that it's not about you. It's what you can do for everybody else. And I think fundamentally, the officers are not set up they're set up to fail, because we don't even train our officers on what their job is, and that's to create not only a team, a high-performing team out of the group of misfits that they're given. And where did we go wrong with that? Well, we get complacent. We sit in, we figure out that we can show up, and every 2 weeks that paycheck keeps coming in. And we don't have to do anything for that paycheck to keep coming in. And it's led to where we're at today. And so we have to go out and activate everybody in the organization to say, the blunt of that organization is sitting right there at the bottom. There's where the power lies. You're trained to believe the power is at the top. It is not. And if you're waiting on that, you're going to be waiting your entire career. And the day you leave, it'll be the same fire department as the day you walked in the door, unless enough of us come together at the bottom and we change it. Now, it may take a few months, may take a few years to change out that leadership at that organization, but what's it hurt to try? Because we need to be trying and we need to be changing it. So I'm not worried about the ones that are in there. I'm worried about the ones that are going to replace the ones that are in there. And that's where I'm going after the jugular of every officer here. I've worked for enough bad officers that I will not allow it under my command somebody to be a bad officer. I'll put them in remedial officer training because that's what I signed up to do, just as they signed up to train their companies and what they're weak in. But yet we have officers running around saying training's not my job. What do you think your job is? I mean, honestly, it's more than just moving up from the back seat to the right front seat, pushing a few buttons and making a decision and running command until a higher authority gets there. That's a little small piece of it.
Yeah.
But yet all of our training is on strategy and tactics and on the fire ground, which is the smallest percentage of what we actually do day to day. But how many classes have we had in effective communication in the fire service? Where's our classes on accountability? I think it's kind of like the servant leadership movement. I believe in servant leadership. I honestly do. But you have to know when it's time to be a servant leader and when it's not. So we're training these people. You need to go out here and be a servant leader. And when they run into a 10%er and that 10%er says, screw you, and they're a servant leader, what are they going to do? Drop to their knees and wash their feet because they're a servant leader? Or are they going to turn their hat around and become a manager and say, now you're going to do it because I told you you're going to do it? We're not grooming bosses. And I think it's led to the pacification of the American Fire Service. I honestly have. And I'm here to change it. That's what I'm trying to do. By leading the way and showing people where the power, that they have the freedom of choice every single day they walk through the doors. They got a choice to be on the top side of that line or the bottom side. And if you're on the top side of the line, you're being a good person, that's where leadership starts. And then you're not worried about throwing people under the bus and stabbing people in the back. It amazes me that we can go out and risk our life for a complete stranger to pull them out of a fire. And then we come back to the firehouse and we can't get along with each other.
Yeah.
And it's like, what in the heck? There's always that one person that can't fuel the truck. Now, another one that leaves one lasagna or brownie in the pan and they loosely cover it and throw it in the refrigerator because they don't want to do the pan. People leave the cups out. It's like we've become a culture of laziness and complacency and a bunch of what I call we whine a lot and we cry a lot when we don't get our way. And you're not always going to get your way. And there's things that's going to happen that you may not like. You may get treated unfairly. What are you going to do when that happens? You got two choices. You can go sit and be a victim for the rest of your career. Oh, poor pitiful me. Or you can pull up your big boy and big girl panties and move on. And we're not grooming that today. And why aren't we? And we need to come out and have those defined lines and saying it's okay. You don't have to come out and be an ass, but you got to come out with your expectations. You got to say, well, this is what me and my crew look like when we show up on a scene. And you're going to do it the right way. We've got to show these young kids how to get on the apparatus as fast as they can and get out. But what we're coming into is we got a young kid that throws their gear on and they're in the back of their truck and they're anxious and they're ready to go and they're watching some sloth walk to the apparatus like they could care less that a run just went out. And that is a company officer. They signed up to be the company officer, and I tell them all you got to do is one thing, and that's be the first one to the truck when the tones drop, not the last, the first. And ask any young kid, how's that going to make you feel when the officer beats you? And 100% of them, not 90, not 99, 100% of them say, that's going to make me feel like crap. But what are you going to do in exchange? I'm going to get faster. Mm-hmm. All the officer has to do is care that a run went out and make it. And that's the best part of this job. And that's the one that they're like, got to make another run, or they complain that we were up twice after midnight. And so I say, you know what? If you're not happy, there's the door. Go get a job to put your butt in your own bed every single night. Did you not realize you were going to get woke up? This is truly the best job in the entire world. And I want more people to want to do 30, 40 years. But how many people have you seen with 25, 30 years say they want to repeat it? They don't. And why? Because of the politics, because they're beat down, they're browbeat for whatever reason. And when are we going to put a stop to it and rise up? So one of the other movements that we do is the silent majority. It's time for them to quit being silent and for them to stand up and take back our organizations and make everybody owners and take ownership in it so that we can move an organization forward.
I think Kyle's part of the silent majority sometimes.
Yeah, it's very interesting to I caught most of it even in the beginning when I was still editing some stuff. But, for me, from kind of a personal experience, and you say, people that don't want to experience it and do it all over again, I'm at a point in my career and the experiences that I've had, I have the ability to buy back time on my pension because of the military. And I plan on doing that and leaving and walking away from this job after 18 years.
That's sad. And that breaks my heart.
Yeah, and that's disappointing.
And it's the experiences and the things that have happened. And I totally agree with everything you're saying, and it's like we are just in this cycle. And it's like, and it's every level. Every level has their role in it. Every rank has their role in it. And it is so entrenched and deep rooted that it's like you can fix this level, but then this doesn't get fixed. And it's like, all right, we did this for a little bit, but now here we're back on in the hamster wheel, just going around and around and around, and it's extremely challenging, and sometimes it's like, what do you do? And it's challenging. And that's like where I'm at in my career. And it's, it's about a lot of other things, but it's like, when's enough? And it's like time to move on and go drive that purpose and find organizations that want you, you want them. And it's a give and take all the way around, not just one sided. You give, and nothing, and all sorts of other stuff. I mean, there's a lot to it, sure. And that's a 5-hour conversation. But it's just very interesting. And I think you see more and more of that. And as you talk to maybe middle of the road people, a lot of them can't wait to retire and leave. Now, Illinois is a dynamic state to live in, right? Very union heavy there. Politics are heavily involved there. So there's that component on top of everything else with the internal struggles of organizations as well. So it's just one of those things that it's like, I think there's an awareness of a lot of things at different levels for some people, but then other people are just oblivious to what's going on. And it's like, how do we get the cohesion of everybody to move in a right direction? And that's like the $1 million answer.
Well, I think it's time we start getting each other's backs.
Yeah.
Because there's not a greater feeling in the world than when your boss has your back.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a worse feeling in the world when they don't. And there's too much of this backstabbing going on. Nobody has each other's backs anymore. I don't like hearing that, but your story is becoming more and more common.
Mm-hmm.
We're losing the good people because they're tired. They're tired of fighting. They're tired of not being heard. And that's what I'm out trying to fight against. And I'm like, as long as I'm in the fire service, I'm going to fight to try to keep those people. But I got to show those people you can't give up. If we're given a shit sandwich, we got to eat it.
Mm-hmm.
And we can't do anything about it, but plug through it. Like I said, I'm not worried about the ones that are there. I'm worried about the ones that are going to replace them.
Yeah.
The ones that are there, they're the ones wreaking havoc. And I got to get these other guys to put up shields and stop this from getting into their minds. Because once it gets into their minds and they get tired of it after 1,440 minutes every shift of listening to it, it's going to start hardening their hearts.
Yeah.
And then they're going to forget why they even took this job to begin with. And they're looking for a means to an end. I was there for the first half of my career. And then luckily I merged in to Indianapolis Fire. And I kind of got what I say born again in the fire service and fell in love with it. Why? Because I came from a very toxic place of people because we had no leadership and everybody turned on each other. And now I work at a place that truly exemplifies brotherhood. And the example that I use to that is I came from an organization that I was trained that if you were the last engine on the scene, you park in such a way that you can be the first one to leave because you're not blocked in by the hose. And I was promoted very young as a lieutenant. And I look back at that now and it makes me sick to see what I done, which was just follow the leader and be a sheep. That how many times the chief said we could leave the scene and we go get in the apparatus and we're high-fiving each other as we blow the exhaust on our brothers and sisters because we didn't have to stay and pick up the hose. I work at an organization now that when I tell my guys it's time to pick up the hose, you guys can leave. They go to their apparatus, they hit the in-service button, and they come back to the scene, and they don't leave until every inch of hose is off that ground, not because they're told to, because they want to. And you brought up union. I've been in the union my entire career. We have a right-to-work state now in Indiana, and I was raised in a very strict union household. My dad was UAW, my brothers were Teamsters, so I knew about brotherhood before I ever got in the fire service. And some of the things that I have been through as a woman in the fire service, not only a woman, a straight woman in the fire service, where they wanted to put my sex life on 5 o'clock news and everything else, worry about what I did. That was my union brothers doing that to me. So when I go out and I do my bottom-up class, I discuss that very intimately of it doesn't matter if you're a union paying member or not. We are not getting each other's backs. We're not taking care of the guy on the right and the guy on our left. And why aren't we? And that's the stuff that we've got to bring forward and we got to make stronger and give people hope. Because where's the hope at? It's diminishing very quickly, I think, in the fire service. It's like, why should I care? They don't care. Why should I do anything? They don't do anything. And I think all of us in the fire service have to fight the mentality to say, screw this place. Because once you adopt that mentality, you'll never be any good anymore. And that's going to drive and dictate everything you do from that point on. And do you know how many officers have that mentality? And then that's our leadership. And their job is to hold the top and the bottom of that organization together, but they're never trained on how to do it right. Where's our classes in effective communication and accountability and customer service, management, leadership, how to run a meeting? When do you coach? When do you counsel? When do you lay paper? When do you delegate? So that we could stop the micromanagement. None of these classes are going on. Very few. But we're still doing Fire Officer 1 through 4. How's that working out for us? We all got the policies and procedures. How's that working out for us? It's not.
Yeah.
I don't care how big your book is. It's not working. And so we've got to fix not only some of the people, we have to fix the systems which the people work in.
For sure.
And we're not diving into how to fix the systems, the promotional processes, the hiring processes, our training. We've got to fix those systems at some point, but we don't have any organizational leadership training. It amazes me that a Fortune 100 company is there because they have the productivity through the people and everything's running like a well-oiled machine, and they're taking hundreds of thousands of employees and making billions of dollars every year and getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And we can't take a fire department of 30, 40, 50 people and move it 5 foot down the road because we get in our own way. Yeah.
I'm heartbroken to hear that you're ready to leave. So I want to interject something just for a second. It may sound a little unusual. So many years ago, I, for the first time, ever heard the why, why we do what we do. And on a chance encounter, I ended up being out of town on a vacation somewhere, and I was talking to somebody who's not in the fire service, and they made that comment. And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Why are you a firefighter?" And I said, I kind of spewed a couple of things, out of my mouth. But for some reason, it meant a lot to me. And right at that time, I was getting promoted from lieutenant to captain, and I was moving into the academy to become the commander. And I remember like 2 weeks later, I was looking at a brand new class of recruits, and I thought, you know what, this is their very first day, first hour of their first day. So I got out the big Post-it note easel thing that you see, and I asked them, I said, "Why are you here?" And they said the same things that I had written down. Every one of them said, "I want to help people. I want to give back to the community. I want to be part of something bigger than me. I want to be part of a team." And there's no wrong answer too. Every now and then one of them will say, "I needed a paycheck and a set of benefits." And I had written that down, and that was a quarter of a century ago. So I had it stuck in a book somewhere and hadn't looked at it in a long time. Well, late in my career, and depending on who's listening to this podcast, there's a lot of people who know there were times where I worked for some really, really difficult people. And I had some jobs that were very, very challenging and very depressing and very strenuous. And my wife had to listen to me more than one occasion because I was old now, and my pension was maxed out. And I bet there was she'll tell you it was 100 days. I think there was at least 24 days. I said to her, "I'll be home by noon. I'm going to go down there and tell them they can all do whatever. I don't need to be here. I don't need this. See y'all later." And it didn't happen. Day after day, I still stayed there all day long. And then all of a sudden I found that card in a book. I don't know what made me open up the book, and I taped it to my mirror. And sure enough, like within a week or two, it was another one of those days that I was dreading going to work. I thought, you know what, is God giving me this sign? It's time to go. And I'm brushing my teeth, and I looked at that, and I read the same things I just said to you. I want to help people. I want to give back to the community. I want to be part of a team. I want to blah, blah, blah. And as I was brushing my teeth, I was thinking, you know what? The difficult person I'm going to have to go talk to and answer to here in a minute about a BS situation that I shouldn't even be involved in, none of that impacts those reasons I put on that card. I am still part of an organization. I'm part of something bigger than me. I'm still a team player on a team. And ultimately, we are still molding and working with folks who impact delivery of help to people. I might not be riding the fire truck, making the call, but I'm teaching somebody who's going to do that for the next 30 years. There's a reward in that as well. And it finally one day it dawned on me, I am not, because by that time in my life, I was convinced I was just going to get mad enough one day and quit. 45 years on the job. And it dawned on me, nothing they were going to do to me was ever going to take away why I came in this door. I still love the job. And that was impactful for me. It's one of the biggest things I've ever dealt with in my life. So now we had to shift gears, because meanwhile, my family was saying, "Hey, you know what? It's time for you to go. You're not going to work forever. You can't. You might want to work to your 99. You're not going to work to your 99. And it just made me look at everything through a different set of lenses and realize, okay, you know what? This is never going to happen. I'm still going to be happy about this job. I'm still giving back to the job because I was already doing public speaking at that time. And I serve on committees that I still serve on to this day. And I thought, you know what? No one can take that away from me. I'm extremely prideful. Now, I shared it with one of the classes today. The most difficult thing I ever had to do was still retire because I didn't want to let go of that term firefighter. And the reason I say that is I can go to Illinois, I can go to Indiana, I can go to Virginia, walk into your firehouse, and I'm a firefighter. We all know what that means, right? Well, that's the brotherhood. That's what it is. And that's what I didn't want to let go of. That was the biggest thing I had to let go of. But every chapter ends at some point or another, right? I'm not going to live. I'm not the immortal guy that ever held the job. And so there's a part of me that almost wants to at least say to you, look at your why. What made you come into this job? And whatever it is that's beating you down today, is it really, really, really taking away that why? If it is, I'm not here telling you you're making a bad decision. I don't know anything about your scenario, but I do find that sad. But I just wanted to share that similar challenge because I went through it as well. Yeah. But I had the comfort of I was eligible for retirement.
Yeah.
You don't strike me as the kind of guy that, isn't going to work for the next 30
right.
years.
Oh, we got to go after the ones that are above you.
Yeah.
That made your job hell.
Yeah.
That's what I'm after. I'm after them because I think they showed their hand early on and they were never with a strong enough officer for that officer to put their foot right square in their ass and say, not today, honey, not on my engine, not on my ladder, not in my firehouse, not in my battalion. Are you going to continue to act like that? If we can get more company officers to understand to rise up and be the boss that they were meant to be, we could change the entire fire service and get people to fall in love with this job again.
Yes. I don't think we could end on a better note than that. Thank you so much for all your time and sitting with us and chatting. So
thank you.
No, it was an honor.
Thank you for the platform and going out and trying to make a difference in your world using the podcast to do so.
Thank you.
Because there's more and more of this information that we have today. And I don't think it's an information issue. I think it's a digestion issue that we have. And that we need to get more and more of this out there and get people to start paying attention.
I like that. It's not an information issue. It's a digestion issue. I like that a lot.
Yeah.
So, all right.
And little steps and everything helps. So I applaud you what you do. And I think you're impacting the fire service in a positive way.
Thanks.
Thank
More
you.
than pleased to be a part of it briefly.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to the HC Leadership Podcast. Leadership isn't rank or title, it's how you show up. So go look in the mirror. Are you leading with purpose today? Keep reflecting, keep leading. Until next time.